Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with
Blessing Eche,
Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
It's a national orientation agency. It's, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional.
If government says that subsidy is not in oil and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil,
energy or whatever kind of off-grid solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is abysmal. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, it's another beautiful day, another great opportunity for us to look at issues related to business, finance, national development, and the economy. This is Early Exchange, and I am Femi Ayodele. As you know, the Early Exchange is all about shaping policy and advancing development. That's our obligation. We are set to do that today. Today we'll be looking at domestic violence. Domestic violence, it's a global issue, and also we'll look at how it has affected our nation. In recent times, it has taken another dimension. You have more women now, who have been victims, but now the table has turned. You have more men who have been victims. According to statistics by the Lagos State government, you have more men now coming up to report several cases. In the last 1 year, you've had about 340 cases. These are more other things we'll be looking at for our news analysis. Today we'll be looking at the 2024 budget. The president presented the budget to a joint session of the National Assembly yesterday. These are more other things we'll be looking at today. We hope as you join us will make your day worthwhile and remarkable. Now let's kick off the program by switching to our new studio, where Adesua is standing by to take us around the world with news update. Adesua, how are you today?
Good morning, Femi. I'm doing okay. How are you doing too? Okay. Good morning to you, our viewers, and welcome to the morning news update right here on Sook News, your home for developmental news from Nigeria and all around the world. I'm Adesua Iromoseli. In the news, President Tinubu presents 27.5 trillion naira budget of renewed hope. Federal government outlines 2024 plan for National Safety Net project. Lagos State Health Board announces healthcare overall with recruitment and facility rehab. Turkey freezes assets to organizations allegedly tied to militant group. And now the news in full. President Bola Tinubu says the federal government generated $8.65 trillion in revenue between January and September 2023. He revealed this while presenting a budget of 27.5 trillion naira for approval to the National Assembly yesterday. The 2024 budget, titled Budget of Renewed Hope, aims to generate 18.32 trillion naira in revenue. The budget focuses on national defense, internal security, job creation, and macroeconomic stability, with 9.92 trillion naira allocated to non-debt recurrent expenditure.
The proposed budget seeks to achieve job-rich economic growth, macroeconomic stability, a better investment environment, enhance human capital development, as well as poverty reduction and greater access to social security. Defense and internal security are recorded top priority. The internal security architecture will be overhauled to enhance law enforcement capabilities and safeguard lives, property, and investment across the country.
Additionally, the president noted that the budget forms a critical path for human capital development, poverty reduction, and social security. Similarly, President Tinubu has outlined his administration's 2024 plan for the National Safety Net project, expressing a commitment to expanding the initiative to provide increased cash assistance to the vulnerable population in Nigeria. He revealed this during the presentation of the 2024 appropriation bill before the National Assembly. Additionally, efforts will be directed towards transitioning existing beneficiaries to productive activities and employment. The administration has initiated various cash transfer inventions to alleviate economic hardship faced by the vulnerable. President Tinubu also plans to leverage the COP28 summit in UAE to secure substantial funding commitments for Nigeria's energy transition, emphasizing the importance of international partnership and investment aligning with national goals for sustainable energy projects and environmental stewardship. Also, President Bola Tinubu is in Dubai to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, where he will deliver a national statement at the World Leaders Summit on December 1 and 2. His address will focus on Nigeria's stance on renewable energy, climate financing, and need for increased support for developing nations. He will also emphasize accountability for businesses and institutions in promoting sustainable practices. The Nigerian delegation will seek to establish new partnerships and attract foreign direct investments to Nigeria. Still ahead, the Security and Exchange Commission, SEC, has reported that Nigeria Mutual Fund, recognized as collective investment schemes, has experienced substantial growth, generating an estimated gain of 581 billion naira from January to October 2023. The net asset value of mutual funds saw a remarkable increase of 41.18%, rising from 1.411 trillion naira on December 30, 2022 to 1.992 trillion naira by October 27, 2023. All categories of mutual fund, except bond fixed income funds, exhibited growth during this period. The positive trend was driven by factors such as increased investor confidence, rising yields on naira-dominated investment, and a surge in dollar-dominated portfolios amid concerns about the naira's devaluation. The growth outlook for the mutual fund industry remains positive, driven by factors like increased investments from pension fund administrators and institutional clients, the unification of exchange rates, and the growth of segregated portfolio infrastructure funds and real estate investment trusts. The industry's potential is deemed bright given Nigeria's large population, the size of the economy, and the mobile penetration, calling for a coordinated approach to investor education and the utilization of technology to enhance participation. Moving on, the Director General of Nigerian Association of Chambers of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NASIMA, Mr. Shola Obadimu, has emphasized Nigeria's robust position as a marketplace for goods, services and investments. Following the opening of Beauty West Africa exhibition in Victoria Island, Lagos, hosting over 200 companies and 5,000 exhibitors, Obadimu expressed pride in Nigeria's capability to successfully host world-class exhibitions nationwide. He encouraged companies to invest in local industries and manufacturing outlets, citing the exhibition as proof of Nigeria's strength as a market with high demand for products and services. The event showcased the nation's ability to host international exhibitions, attracting exhibitors from across the world. The exhibition aimed to foster international partnership, promote the Made in Nigeria brand, support SMEs, and attract international brands to manufacture locally. In another development, Minister of Interior Olubumi Tunjiojo says the automation of Nigeria's passport application is 99% complete and will be operational within a week. He added that following the completion, Nigerians will only need to visit immigration centers for fingerprint biometrics. Under the new system, citizens can conveniently upload passport photos and supporting documents from their homes. The minister set the official launch date for December 2023, noting that the test phase has been successfully concluded. He therefore stressed the government's commitment to balancing national security and convenience to ensure a streamlined process for passport application. Additionally, he revealed plans to install e-gate system at all international airports in Nigeria by February 2024, aiming to reduce the need for travelers to interact with immigration officers unless flagged as persons of interest. And to some state-related stories, Lagos State Primary Healthcare Board is actively addressing healthcare challenges by announcing plans to recruit more professionals and rehabilitate facilities at primary healthcare centers across the state. The permanent secretary of the board, Dr. Ibrahim Mustafa, outlined the board's proactive approach, including an exit replacement system and a substantial recruitment drive in 2022, with intentions to double the staff in 2024. The emphasis on primary care aligns with the state's commitment to improving grassroots healthcare. According to him, ongoing infrastructure developments include the rehabilitation of 22 primary health centers and the construction of 4 new ones, with the aim to elevate healthcare services quality, contribute to the goal of achieving universal health coverage in line with global health-related sustainable development goal outlined by the World Health Organization. And also, Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly has urged various tax authorities in the state to address the issue of multiple taxation, emphasizing the negative impact of the unregulated tax regime on the growth of small and medium enterprises, SMEs. During the plenary chaired by Speaker Elder Udeme Otong, the Assembly called for the harmonization of tax policies and urged local government tax authorities to consolidate and streamline tax collections and remittances to a single agency. Sponsored by retired Honorable Asukwo Nana Udo, the motion stressed the burden of multiple taxation on micro, small and medium enterprises, constituting the backbone of the state's economy. The Assembly instructed the Akwa Ibom State Board of Internal Revenues to create a tax-friendly environment and conduct awareness campaigns for small businesses regarding their tax obligations. To address these issues promptly, the Assembly delegated the Joint Committee on Appropriation and Finance, along with Public Account, to collaborate with relevant tax collection agencies for an in-depth study and report back within 1 week before the resumption of the sitting on December 7. We go on a quick break now. When we return, we'll bring you foreign news. Stay with us. On the foreign scene, South Africa's The Spar has disclosed a robust 112% surge in half-year profit, primarily attributed to the enhanced performance of its e-commerce ventures, and China's Tencent interim CEO, Evan Tu, noted this positive trajectory and explained that after years of investment and growth, their businesses are now at scale and exhibiting improved profitability. He anticipates these investments turning profitable in the current financial year, ending March 31, 2024, 6 months earlier than initially projected. The technology investor reported a noteworthy rise in core headline earnings for 6 months, with which ended September 30, 2023. Nespa's e-commerce portfolio includes entities like iFood, Delivery Hero, Swiggy, OLX, Skillsoft, Stack Overflow, and PayU. The report highlighted a substantial reduction in the e-commerce trading loss. M-Trader in South Africa are cautiously optimistic as they anticipate the country's first interest rate cut to potentially occur in March 2024. This positive outlook comes as the growth in money supply and private sector loans was slightly lower than expected in October, with money supply increasing by 6% and private credit extension by 3.9%. While these figures fell short of initial forecasts, they indicate a steady and balanced economic environment. Traders are hopeful that this adjustment in market expectations will lead to future rate cuts that can provide a boost to the economy and support continued growth. Also, Turkey announced the freezing of local assets for 20 organizations and 62 individuals across Australia, Japan, and various European countries, alleging ties with Kurdish militant group PKK. Turkey's Ministry of Treasury and Finance stated that the decision was made based on reasonable grounds that the entities committed acts falling within the scope of the law on preventing the financing of terrorism. The list includes organizations from Germany and Switzerland, both home to a significant Kurdish diaspora, as well as entities from Australia, Italy, Japan, and other affected organizations were located in Austria, Belgium, Denmark, France, Sweden, and Norway. In another development, a global technology network, IOTA, has launched a $100 million foundation in Abu Dhabi to hasten the expansion of its distributed ledger technology in the Middle East. The co-founder and chairman of the organization, Dominic Schenner, highlighted the foundation's goal of facilitating the transformation of real-world assets into digital ones using distributed ledger technology, which shares similarities with blockchain. The company's ecosystem distributed ledger technology foundation, approved by regulators of Abu Dhabi Globe Market ADGM, marks the first blockchain-focused organization in the UAE's financial center. The initiative, funded by digital tokens, adds an additional layer to support to a sector recently impacted by the collapse of major players. Schenner emphasized the moment to position technology by focusing on onboarding institutions in the UAE. And finally, India's space agency is looking to collaborate with Boeing, Blue Origin, and Voyager Space Holdings following an official visit by the head of NASA, which highlights the growing cooperation between the US and India in space exploration. The partnerships may also involve Indian commercial entities, as stated by India's Department of Space. This move signifies the potential for joint missions, research projects, technology sharing, and investments that could significantly advance space exploration and foster innovation, benefiting both India and the global scientific community. And that's our package on morning news updates. Many thanks for staying with us. Early Exchange continues shortly. I'm Adesuwa Iramaseli.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with
Blessing Aiche,
Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Ida Hosa Osamanse.
It's a national orientation agency. It's, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional.
If government says that subsidy is not in oil and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil,
energy or whatever kind of oil-based solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, it's a bismarck. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, thank you, Adesua, for that news update. Now it's time for news analysis, where we review the major headlines trending today. As you know, when it comes to Early Exchange, you can count on us when it comes to the best form of analysis. And as usual, I'm being joined by our in-house analyst. I'm not alone. Blessing is here. Blessing, good morning. How are you today?
I'm good. Good morning,
Good to see
Femi.
you.
Yes, same here. Good morning. Also, someone's there.
Renewed hope.
Renewed hope is on the table,
yes.
right?
I like that, renewed hope.
Renewed hope.
We want to make it a slogan now. And with this, maybe that would be a good starting point.
Okay, let's see how it goes.
All right, that leads us to our first story, which has to do with the 2024 budget. You know, that's been the news of the moment. You know, yesterday, the president grabbed news headlines when he went to the floor of the National Assembly to present, you know, the 2024 national budget to a joint session of the National Assembly comprising, you know, the senators and the House of Reps members. The interesting thing is that yesterday he made history and he tagged the budget renewed hope. That's about 27.5 trillion compared to that of 2023. 2023 was 21 trillion. So that's a difference of about 6.5 trillion. So I'm going to start with you, Dauza, with the theme, renewed hope. Do you think that is more political, as some will argue, that's more political, or the president is objective this time around by tagging that budget, renewed hope, the budget of renewed hope? Let's start with that.
Okay, I think the numbers should speak for themselves. If you look at the figures as the president presented them yesterday, you see there's a marked difference from what happened in 2023 and what we are seeing in 2024. You see, the deficit in 2023 was about 6.1%, which of course would have meant that the federal government needed more money to borrow to be able to finance its budget. But what we have seen that this year's budget had actually gone down to about 3.4% of the GDP, speaking to the deficit. So hope is rekindling, so we are not spending more trying to fund the budget. That government is looking out to see how he's able to put a whole lot of things together. Because that's actually been my worry. You are having a budget of 27 trillion, and you are looking at projected revenue of about 10.1 trillion from tax, dividends, and other sources, and you see that there's a gap of about 17 trillion, and you're wondering how we're going to
Where would the money come
from to finance this budget. And so we saw that he also alluded that the area of energy and greening, Nigeria won't have to spend so much money in that direction. We will need to rely on private-public partnership to drive that project. And said he detailed some of his ministers to go to Dubai and not come empty-handed. So these are the things that, of course, are bringing hope back to us, to see that things are being done well. And I'm also very intrigued by the fact that the president said, well, go ahead, scrutinize this budget very well, but don't delay it so that we can kick off and maintain that January to December budget cycle without any hitch. And of course, the National Assembly also retorting in their vote of thanks and saying, Mr. President, please speak to your minister head of MDAs that when they call them to come to the National Assembly for the verse of budget, they should not travel. They should come on time and let's do all this together and see how Nigeria can make progress. So to a very large extent, I think there's hope.
All right. Before we do further analysis, I would like us to listen to the president. You know, he spoke about the direction, its objective as regards this 2024 budget. I would like us to take a listen.
The proposed budget seeks to achieve job-rich economic growth, macroeconomic stability, a better investment environment, enhance human capital development, as well as poverty reduction and greater access to social security. Defense and internal security are recorded top priority. The internal security architecture will be overhauled to enhance law enforcement capabilities and safeguard lives, property, and investment across the country.
Let's go.
All right. You've heard the president. Let me take you to Idahosa now. He said defense and security will be given priority, will be prioritized. And if you look at the breakdown of the budget, that is taking the chunk of the allocation as far as the funds be allocated in the budget. What does that suggest to you about the intention of the president?
Well, I think it's also very, very heartwarming to know that the president has prioritized the really key issues that, of course, will create that enabling environment for foreign direct investments and public-private participation to happen in governance. Number one, it is important that if you're in a state of war, nobody wants to put money in that economy. Even if people are bringing money, it will be humanitarian and it will be channeled toward economic activity. So defense is critical because we look at the entire length and breadth of the nation, from the northeast to the southeast, all the troubles that are brewing, we need to actually see how to curtail them. I'm not thinking that this may be in terms of hardware alone. We must also be looking at soft power in dealing with these issues. And that's why, of course, followed defense and security is education, which, of course, the president also highlighted that was very critical, that human capital is very critical to the development of any society. Because if you look at the story of Singapore, for example, trying to see how to attract FDI from all parts of the world to Singapore, one of the decisions that the government took at the very beginning was to see how to empower intellectually the youth of Singapore to be able to fit into the dream of being the finance capital. And this required that the best of brain, of course, the Singaporean government needed to train abroad, and we're investing locally in the education, fostering science and mathematics, and these were deliberate policies by that government. And of course, in no due time, we see that the country rises. So human capital is actually also very important. And of course, don't forget infrastructure. We have a very wide deficit in terms of infrastructure. And the president is looking at spending close to 6 trillion of the budget sum in this critical area to see how we can enhance security, create the right human capital that is needed to drive the economy, and then, of course, build some basic infrastructure that will create that enabling environment for business to thrive.
Well, the budget for me, it looks realistic given current situations, but I have some worries. But before I get to the part of the worries, for me, what was impressive about the budget is that the difference between recurrent expenditure, non-debt recurrent expenditure, and capital expenditure isn't so wide as what we usually see. You see recurrent expenditure taking a very large chunk of the budget and capital expenditure just having very little, but that's not the case with this budget. And then for debt servicing too, it is not also very huge, which is quite impressive. I think that the removal of oil subsidy has helped in that regard. And then looking at the financing of the deficit, which is about 8 trillion, there will be borrowings, and there will also be borrowings from privatization proceeds and all. That is quite okay. But the worry that I have, however, is the dollar rate that was adopted, which is 750 naira, it is realistic given the current situation, but it doesn't quite give hope to business people. It doesn't quite give hope about the outlook of the coming year, because that means that we're still going to have the hike in price of goods and services, because if 750 naira is adopted officially, you can imagine what the parallel market, the rates will have there. And a lot of importers source forex from that market. So that means that the situation we're having in terms of price hike in goods and services may continue in the year 2024. That is the worry that I have. And then the production estimates, the oil price benchmark is put at almost $78 per barrel. Well, also realistic, it could go over that, but yes, that's good. But the production estimate is quite low. Yes, I would say again that they are quite realistic, but it also means that maybe much work haven't been done, or there isn't strategy to do much work to increase production, because 1.78 million barrels per day is quite low. It's quite low. So I don't quite see a lot of things changing apart from the focus of the budget, where the areas where the budget is going to focus on, which is security. When security is improved, then of course you could have a better environment to do business. And then talking about human capital development, people need to upskill, whether formally or informally, so that they can be in better position to generate revenue by themselves. And then social safety nets. The part that I like about it is that the existing beneficiaries will be targeted at being productive, and that will be not just giving people fish, but also giving you enough fish. Right now, we want to teach you how to fish and see how you too can contribute to other persons getting fish. So those are the impressive areas for me, but my worry, like I said, is the exchange rate and then our production estimate. It doesn't quite look like we would have so much difference in those aspects.
No, but I think it's no need to worry so much about. If you look at the background against which the president spoke at the floor of the National Assembly chamber, was the fact that we understand what is driving the exchange rate. Now, they are not situations that you can deal with. Yeah, you can deal with.
Make projections based on what you are doing.
Yeah. You see, the issue is that we need to deal with critical issues. Some of them are not within our control. We cannot determine what happened in that direction. Of course, the hike in price of goods, which is, of course, propelled by the geopolitics that is happening outside of Nigeria, they are huge factors. We can't see in our country and determine when the Ukrainian-Russia war is going to end, for example. And the prices that this is triggering all across the globe is not within our control.
Sorry to cut in, but I find that a bit contradictory, that we can't sit in our home and determine what happens with the Ukraine and Russia crisis. By that I mean,
just listen. You see, there are things that you need to be able to understand. We are living in a very connected world. That what is happening in one country affects what happened in your own country. Now, if there are situations that are outside, take for example, just the war in between the conflict between the Hamas and Israeli, see what it has created in the whole of the Middle East, and what is happening, even the spillover and the shock effect that it gives to all economies in the world. We're not talking about Nigeria, and that's why, of course, he spoke against that we are growing against the headwind, which are internationally determined. Because, for example, logistics is going to tell you how much you are going to buy goods, because we are going to say, because we are heavily import-dependent economy. Now, we can't solve that in 2024 alone. That is it. Now, what you're going to be looking at is that how is CBN going to manage the monetary situation such that the difference between the official rate and the parallel market is not so wide. Now, what that will mean is that if all the agreements that, of course, the government is entering into, the partnership that the government is entering into, and these funds are coming into the country, of course, it will increase the inflow of dollars. And if you have sufficient dollar within the economy, the people at the parallel are not likely going to be selling at 1,000. And which means we'll be able to have a kind of a parity between what is in the official window and what is in the parallel window. For example, if CBN has enough dollar, for example, to sell, and they are in the commercial bank, nobody will need to go to parallel market to go and buy. If you remember, at the beginning of the floating, the exchange rate at the official window became higher than higher than the one at the parallel market. So what this means is that as long as people are having to get this from the official window and is available, which means, of course, economic activities is increasing within this situation, we can stabilize at the moment at that. But the projection is between 2024, because you are looking at the framework of about 5 years, 6 years, which is a projection. So we can expect a drastic downturn. But what you are projecting is that, given all circumstances put together, we're looking toward this direction. It's a projection. It could be lower.
It could be higher.
It could be higher. So that's projection. What is going to determine whether it's low or high are also the reality in the international space. So if the condition in the international space worsen, for example, you don't have anything to do about that.
Okay, this is what I was aiming at when you talked about the Ukraine situation, by extension, what plays out in the international scene. You know, when we talked about the stockfish thing and reproducing some of the things that we consume in some editions of this program, we talked about producing for ourselves the things that we consume. Now, take the Ukraine and the Russia case, for instance. Our major import from them is wheat and other grains.
No, it's not for us alone. This is
I get what you're saying, but there's
wait, you are not getting the.
I get what you were saying, but there's someone going with it.
This is the issue. China, India, for example,
yes,
our major trading partners, take gas and petrol from Russia.
I get
Now, what it means is that if the prices of these things are going up for other countries that we are buying from, it's not just wheat. The factor is more than wheat.
I only use that as an example because largely we are import dependent. What about looking?
As long as that is the reality,
as long as that is the case,
international space.
Yes, largely we are import dependent.
Yeah.
But what is the plan to look at some of our imports, cutting down also on our need for forex? That is what I'm talking about. Not just
but
you
see, when you're saying cutting down on imports, it's not something that's going to happen overnight.
Yes,
if you are going to, for example, build a factory today and bring in the machinery, you're not going to do it today. You can't start producing machinery today to determine that, oh, by today we won't be having to import cloth. You will need to first build a factory. You will need to put a structure in place, and this cannot happen in a physical year.
I like the fact that, for me, starting with a theme, I like it's more strategic for me, taking it renewed hope. You know, Nigerians, they've been very hopeful, you know, since this president has been elected. For me, I think he's the most experienced president Nigeria will ever have. And so Nigerians have been hopeful. Now, taking it renewed hope, we've had instances in the past where a certain president has promised, okay, Nigeria should be hopeful. But now this one is tagged renewed hope.
Is it about
so
the
for
tag?
me, no, hold on.
What is
for me, it's
tag?
strategic. You know, what it means is it gives a sense of direction to what the president intends to do. You might look at the fact that it's one of his political slogans or his political during campaign, but it's also strategic in the sense that it's providing direction when it comes to what he wants to achieve with the budget, you know, to create economic stability. I also like the fact that the issue of defense and security is being prioritized. In the last 5 years, Nigeria has been in the bad light when it comes to the issue of insecurity because of the issue activities of insurgents and all that. And it's also critical for investors who wants to come into Nigeria. You know, the president has been talking about FDI, foreign direct investment. For investors to come into your space, they must be ensured that you're providing adequate security. So when you have a budget prioritizing defense and security, it tells you that the president is more proactive, is serious about the issue of defense and security. And so that will also motivate investors who wants to come into the Nigerian space to bring their money and to do businesses. The good thing also is also what the Minister of Finance also corroborated yesterday, that the budget is not going to be the over-dependence on borrowing this time around is going to be avoided, whereby you do more of generating IGR, asset sales, and to look at the possibility of improving the tax net so that we can generate money internally rather than depending on borrowing. So the good thing for me also is the fact that the implementation of the budget will start as early as January 1st, and the National Assembly, they've gone into work, they've broken into the several committees to see what they can do to ensure that this is passed, so that by the time we start the year 2024, the budget will kick on a good note. But my worry also is the level of performance, which has always been an annual challenge. Over the years, with the level of performance of the budget has been performing very low, whereby you have projections. Of course, they are estimated figures. But like what Idauza was saying, the realities will still play out. In the international space, you can't be isolated. The truth is, if your economy is still import-driven, what it means is, if the foreign currencies, if I may put it this way, if the dollar sneezes, it affects the naira. Yes. So what are we going to do locally to ensure that we mitigate this effect? And that's why the president has been emphasizing on human development capital to look inward. The truth is, there are certain things you have control over. There are certain things you don't have control over. So for me, what we have control over locally, let's focus on that when it comes to the issue of production. I'm happy. One of the major challenges has to be the ease of doing business. It's part of what the president talked about yesterday, that is going to be tackled headlong. And then the issue of power, because of the signature, I mean, a few months ago, the president signed the electricity bill. And so all these factors will help businesses to thrive in Nigeria. But it's a matter of time. It's not something that will happen overnight, like what that
but you see, this is what he said. I've said to my cabinet, this assignment we have taken on is likened to drawing water from a dry well. And that statement for me is very profound. You see, we can speculate all that we can. We must all come to terms with the reality of life. A woman can't be pregnant today and give birth tomorrow. It will take 9 months. And that's a process. So, but what you are going to see, and these are the things for me which brings hope. And that's where I started from, looking at the debt finance or deficit finance to GDP, which has drastically moved from 6% to 3%. And that gives hope. If it's realized at the end of the day, like I said, you projected revenue for 11 trillion last year in this year's budget, and as at 30th of September, what you have realized is about 8 trillion. That's the actual that's coming in. So there's more deficit. These are issues that we must look at, and these are the critical things we can hazard as a guess. Look, what is the borrowing profile for 2024? 7.4 trillion. That's what the president is projecting. Yes, we're going to take some money, because there's no way you finance 27 trillion where your projected revenue is 10 trillion. But it's not to say that the government is not doing anything. For me, the numbers are not ambitious. You are looking at OPEC also trying to stabilize the price of petrol worldwide, and they are still talking about how to cut coal in terms of the crude available in the market space. Again, not within your control, because you belong to that, you signed that treaty and you're a member of that, and you must play by the rule of OPEC. You can't just wake up every morning and say, oh, I'm going to produce 20. Now, you have to also project it along what is happening with your partners whether they are the OPEC, whether they are World Health Organization, UNESCO, all this will condition how this will play out. But the truth for me here is the fact that we're looking at numbers that are going downward in terms of deficits, and that is real renewed hope.
We need to move on now. We have to spend more time on this because in the business community, this is the major news for today. It's been trending since yesterday.
Because a lot of
let's
businesses
move on.
Want to know, okay, how's it going to be next year? How's it going to be
So let's move on. It's still about the president. The president is heading to Dubai to attend the United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, where he will deliver a national statement at the World's Leaders Summit. Talking about COP28 is going to start today, from now till December 12th. You know, it's an international conference about, the climate change, and that has been the focus over the years. And this time around, nothing different from that will also going to happen. So, but our president strategically is planning to attend the conference, on his way to the conference, or perhaps is there now. Let me take you to Idauza. This is an advantage for our president to also take advantage of this global stage to either talk about his plans, his economic plans, or what he intends to achieve, as the chairman of ECOWAS. I'd like you to talk to us. What do you think the president should prioritize or take advantage of this global stage to achieve?
I think one of the things going for our president is the fact that by words and deed, he has not so much deviated from his renewed hope document. And so it is very easy for us to predict what the president is going to ask for. And he has spoken extensively in different fora on the lip service that the Western powers and the developed economies are paying to the issue of climate change and the greening sustainability debate. We are talking about financing, because this will be on the table. How maybe the developing world can borrow more money to invest on the green technology and see how we can reduce carbon footprint here. Now, but this is the position of the president. Is it not allow us to use what we have, or give us money to do what we want to do? So I think this is what the president is saying, because he has already alluded to it, even at the presentation yesterday, that he has already detailed the members of cabinet, the strategic ministers that are going for this conference to secure deals and tangible commitments
and attract foreign direct investment.
Yes, on the funding of greening Nigeria. So it is clear from the president's point of view that yes, because between us we know that most of the impact we're talking about here actually come from the West, and they should actually be paying us reparation for creating so much of environmental degradation back home here, and not really asking us to come and borrow more, take more loan to finance this new project, which of course they are the one holding the knife and holding the yam. So I think the president is going to be more strategic in asking for and negotiating with some of the advanced economy to see how can you come partner with us, because he has said it from day one that he would not mind delaying gratification. In other words, I can allow private participation in the economy, build, operate, and then hand over after a period of time, and then we can begin to reap the benefit. So this for me may be the focus of the president's address at COP28.
Yes, that's quite true. It looks more like going to seek for investment opportunities rather than just talk about climate change.
Take the climate change agenda. Nigeria
it's the same thing we're saying. It's the same thing we're saying. Rather than just go there as usual and say, this is what we want to do, we're together review on addressing climate change, we're making it more business-like. While we talk, join us to do this. If you're bringing investments to our country, in what way does it also aid the reduction of carbon in the environment? That's what it's like. And it's like, okay, don't just go there talk. as you go talk, look for the ones too that are also bring in the money. And also, I like the business angle it's given. It seems like it uses every opportunity to market, and it's quite good.
All right, what a way to wrap up this news analysis. I must thank you, Blessing. Thank you, the wise man, for providing, as usual, the wise counsel.
My privilege to be here with the very cerebral anchors.
I'll add that to my CV. Great. All right, we need to go on a short break now. When we return, we'll focus on our big story for today. What's our big story? We'll be looking at domestic violence in Nigeria. And that will take place after this short break. Stay with us.
My name is Olatunji Shoti Miri. I'm a performing artist and, television radio presenter and a university lecturer, Unilag. Keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching Sook News. If you're not watching Sook News, I pity you, but keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timmy Dakolo and you're watching Sook News. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at Sook News. Guys, keep watching Sook News for everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news. Sook News is your station.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Eiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Orubuje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
It's a national orientation agency. It's, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional.
The government says that subsidy is not in oil, and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil.
Energy or whatever kind of off-grid solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, it's a bismarck. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Yes, indeed, our obligation is to shape policy and advance development with our conversation. Today, our big story has to be the issue of domestic violence. It's a global issue. In the United States, record has it that 20 people in 1 minute are being abused either physically or sexually in the United States. In Nigeria, it's another ball game. Interestingly, as far as Lagos State is concerned, the issue of domestic violence is taking another turn, it's taking another dimension. In the past, you have more women to be victims, but now you have more men who are now reporting the issue of domestic violence. According to the statistics, in the last 1 year, 340 cases have been reported in Lagos, where cases where women are domestically abusing their husbands. To shed more light on this, we're being joined by our special guest, Taiwo Akinlami, who is a public interest and social legal practitioner. He joins us via Zoom. Taiwo, glad to have you join us on Early Exchange this morning.
Thank you very much for having me. It's my pleasure to be with you today.
Great. Glad to be your host this morning. Now, let's look at the issue of domestic violence globally. You know, it's a universal problem. It's a universal challenge, not limited to Nigeria. But I would like you to talk about the Nigerian space in recent times. What has been the development when it comes to the issue of domestic violence in Nigeria? What has been the trend? What has been the statistics? And then what's your take on the fact that more men are being abused in a place like Lagos State, according to the statistics?
Well, thank you for having me once again. I think first it is important to differentiate between what is being reported and the number of people, of men being abused. I think that the fact that more men are coming forward to speak about being abused does not change the reality on ground, which is the fact that the most endangered people when it comes to domestic violence are women and children. Statistic has it that 1 in every 4 women faces the threat of domestic violence while relating with a partner, with an intimate partner. Now, statistics has it that 1 in every 6 child, 1 in every 10 children, suffer from violence at home. And so when you look at that, you now compare that to what we are finding in Lagos State. I think what is happening in Lagos State should be attributed to the efforts by Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency of the Lagos State government, which has taken the bull by the horn by creating awareness. I think that awareness to know that you don't have to be ashamed if, for whatever reason, you are being, abused in your marriage, or you are being abused by a partner. I think our men have been able to do away, particularly in Lagos State, with the whole idea or the shame that accompanies, reporting that they are being abused by their spouse or by their intimate partner. I think that's why we see a surge in the reporting. I think if we look at it nitty-gritty, the fact still remains that the most endangered people when it comes to domestic violence is women and children.
All right, thank you very much, Taiwo Akinlemi, for joining us on Early Exchange. Now, looking at domestic abuse or domestic violence, what could you say could be sometimes the causes of issues around domestic violence?
Well, I think that violence is taught from childhood. Childhood is the foundation of every human being. Maria Montessori says the child is the father of a man. So people learn violence from childhood, and they grow up, seeing, violence in their homes, violence in their environment, violence in their nation. And so at the end of the day, they grow up, their socialization has every element of violence in it. And so because of that, you find a situation where people do not know how else to resolve a matter except through violence, by reason of their upbringing, by reason of their socialization. So because of that, you find that, so the root cause is childhood. The root cause is the family setting. The root cause is the home that children come from. The root cause is the society that make today's adult. The root cause is the fact that we are dealing with a situation where people will end up as they were raised. So today, we find a lot of violence in homes. You find a lot of violence in families because the upbringing of the people who are family women today, who are family men today, was rooted in violence. And so because of that, I think it's from childhood. The problem begins from childhood. And it is important, that we address it, because that's why we are saying that enlightenment is superior to enforcement. We say in our organization that our nation does not have national problem. We don't have domestic problem. We don't have educational problem. We don't have national problem. We don't have marriage problem. We are dealing with only one problem: mismanaged childhood manifesting in dysfunctional adulthood. That is the problem we are dealing with. And until we go back to the basis, because you see, there's a factory that produces the violent men. There's a factory that produces the violent women. It is going to be a waste of effort to focus on this, to focus on this, on the product, which is the violent man and the violent man, or the woman or the man who perpetrates violence, and refuse to visit the factory. All we need to do is to shut down the factory. When we shut down the factory, we'll realize that the product, will cease to come forward.
All right, now let's dwell lightly on the impact of domestic violence on the children, because you are, from your background, you are a child rights activist. I'd like you to talk about this aspect, the impact of domestic violence on children, on even the family setting, and at large, the society.
I think that violence redirects the child. Violence messes up the mind of the child. So there are 4 ways by which a child can be abused. One of it, the fifth one that is hardly spoken about, is that a child witnessing violence at home. A child witnessing violence at home. You know, the home is supposed to be a place where children are supposed to feel safe most. Now, when you are at home and you don't feel safe, then you begin to deal with what we call siege mentality. Now, that not feeling safe is because of what is happening around you. It's because of the violence that is perpetrated by living partners, intimate partners, or spouses, and all of that. Now, growing up, I grew up in a very violent environment. I grew up seeing my father pounded my mother, so many times. I saw my mother also responding, to that treatment. My mother was not the kind of woman that you were going to beat and she was just going to fold her arms and do nothing. My father could be sure that if he raised his hand, which he did many times, my mother was going to respond, accordingly. And so I grew up in that environment. I also myself, I was physically abused. When my father wanted to cane me, my father would tie my legs, he would tie my hands, he would strip me naked, he would give me 6 shows of the cane and he would go and sit down. And that could go on for half a day. And we lived in Ado Ekiti, face me, I face your apartment where everybody minded their business except gossip. So I grew up, seeing violence. I grew up, violence being meted out against me. And so I grew up thinking that the whole arrangement about marriage is about, getting married to someone. And if the person does what you do not like, you end up, beating up the person. You end up, taking your pound of flesh. Until I began to have a new orientation and a new thinking in 1997 when I became a follower of Christ. And the truth of the matter is that I don't think I would have been able to do the things that I'm doing today, except the fact that there was an intervention. I would have just become another man who beats up his wife, who beats up his children, who messes up, who transfer to the next generation that violence that my parents invested in me. And that's how this thing works. Look at people like Hitler. Hitler was an abused child. What did he do? He became an adult. The violence that the parents meted out to him, he transferred it to 62 million people. That was the number of people that the Second World War killed. You look at people like Joseph Stalin. They were abused, messed up, beaten violently. The father of Joseph Stalin did not only beat up Joseph Stalin, also beat up the mother. One story has it that Joseph Stalin was beaten to a point that at a point he was urinating blood. That's how bad the violence he suffered. He became an adult to say he was leading a revolution. You know how many people that he killed that died through that process. So what happens is that the impact of violence against children is eternal, except there's divine intervention. That is why we make effort in our organization to ensure that we educate parents, we educate children, we help them understand the impact of their actions, the things that they do or they omit to do, the impact of that on their children, and how that schedules what they do in terms of perpetrating violence against their children, schedules a moment of pain for people of the future in the lives of those children.
All right, you just painted a picture of what children go through in the home, not just when their parents abuse each other or one partner abuses the other, but even when the children are the sufferers of the abuse from the parents. But we live in a society where it is believed that until you enforce physical punishment, you can't correct a child, you can't ensure proper upbringing. So where do we draw the line between ensuring proper upbringing and not going into physical violence for children as parents?
Well, for me, I don't believe in physical violence. I don't even believe in this concept you call child discipline. I don't believe in it. So child discipline to the extent that it is only the child that needs discipline in the family. It's not only the child that needs discipline in the family. If we accept that nobody is perfect in the family, daddy is not perfect, mommy is not perfect, it therefore means in the family we should be talking about the culture of discipline, not child discipline. Because the way we present it these days, a weak father, a weak mother, a weak guardian who has legions of issues, who cannot control his or her own anger, who cannot control, who cannot deal with anger management, is meting out our weaknesses, his or her anger on the child. And what is expected is that is called discipline. That cannot be discipline. So for me, the fundamental thing we first need to establish is that our children are either beneficiaries or victims of our example. Whatever we see our children do, we are the one who put those things there by our examples. So therefore, what we must be concerned about as parents, first of all, is the example we show to our children. Now, that example informs what our children do. So this is what happens. We raise our children in a particular way. We show all kinds of examples that are negative. These children follow the example. All of a sudden, we want to discipline them. All of a sudden, we want to put them right. Meanwhile, it is important to note that the mental infrastructure of a child is formed between age 0 and 6, mental infrastructure. That is, the land chalk of the personality of the child is formed between age 0 and 6. Now, research has said that, science has told us that. Do you know that this age 0 and 6 is what Maria Montessori called the formative years? The formative years. Children at that time have absorbent mind. Do you know that this first 6 years of the life of the child is how do children receive instructions in these first 6 years? Children receive instructions in these first 6 years not by beating, not by teaching. How much can you teach a 2-year-old? How much can you teach a 3-year-old? How much can you teach a 5-year-old? How much can you teach a 6-year-old? Children at that level, at that absorbent mind, at those formative years, they receive instructions by observation, by the examples that their parents show to them. That's how they receive instruction. That is why when a German child is going to speak, the German child is going to speak German. Nobody sits down and teach him. When a Nigerian child is going to speak, well, we have been ignorant, we've been Englishized, if there's any word like that. So when a Nigerian child is going to speak, he's going to speak English anyway. But when a German man is going to speak, he's going to speak German. When a French boy is going to speak, he's going to speak French. When a Japanese child is going to speak, he's going to speak Japanese. When an English boy is going to speak, he's going to speak English. Now, who taught the Englishman English? English boy English? Nobody. By observation. It will be foolhardy for us to think that the only thing the child picks up is language. The child does not pick up only language. The child picks up everything around the home. So those formative years is where the work is. Unfortunately, we lose time on those formative years. Unfortunately, we have not even started parenting those formative years. A lady was telling me that my husband would say they are still growing up now, just leave them. Don't worry, when they are old, we'll deal with them. Forgetting they are being formed by the day. So for me, what I would say is that we need to go back. Society needs to revisit this thing we call child discipline. I don't believe in it. What I believe in is the culture of discipline, where in the home, everybody understands that each of us have a role to play in the sanity of the home and in the sanity of society. And roles are not assigned. So daddy also can be disciplined. So mommy also can be disciplined. Children also can be disciplined. So the question is, how do we discipline daddy? How do we discipline mommy? How do we discipline children? So there has to be an agreement at the level of the family as to all of that is done. But this present reality of learning from the old, bringing old tradition into today, putting old wine in new wine skin, trying to raise children by dominating them, becoming domineering parents, dominating children, beating them for what they know nothing about, it's not working. It has not worked. It's not going to work.
All right, let's look at children who are being victimized or abused, because we're in a climate where children, by the virtue of their age, they can't sue or they can't be sued. Now, what kind of intervention is available for children who are being victimized, that they can take advantage of to seek help? What kind of intervention should be made available in the society so that children who are going through these things can seek help as at when needed?
So let me say that children can sue. The state will sue on behalf of children. The child does not belong to the parents. The child belongs to the state. Parents are caretakers. So children are protected by the law. So if anybody abuses a child, the child may not be able to go to court for himself or herself. The government is going to go to court for the child. And so it is important that we take that out of the way. So a child also can be sued, depending on, because if you look at the criminal justice in Nigeria, you look at criminal justice vis-a-vis it relates to children, you will realize that children, there's something called children in conflict with the law. Age of criminal responsibility in Nigeria is not 18 years. I think age of criminal responsibility is 7 years. Between 7 and 12 years, you can be criminally responsible. So if a child commits a crime or does something that is contrary to the law, that child becomes a child in conflict with the law. And the law has made provisions for how that will be addressed. Nobody, human being, living, once you cross the age of 7, between age 7 and 12, can get away with anything, running foul with the law. Having said that, so children, the custodians of the souls of children is the Nigerian state. And that's why I keep saying there are 4 rings of protection. The first one is the family. Family is first, but family is not all. The second one is the community. The community, in the community, you have the neighbor. In the community, you have the schools, you have religious places of worship. All of those people are in the community. Then you move from the community, you go to the state. That is the government, making sure that there are laws that protect our children. Then from national government, you go to international community. That is why the most ratified convention in the world today that protect the rights of children is the United Nations Convention. It's the most ratified human rights convention in the world. That convention was promulgated into law in Nigeria in 2003. That is what we domesticated as the Child Rights Act 2003, and which has now been domesticated in 30 states of the Federation. So the point, therefore, is that what we need to do, we need our children to understand that they must be their own whistleblower. If a child is experiencing any form of violence, the child has a responsibility to speak up. And we, as citizens, we must also understand that we are social police. Social policing simply means that if we have 200 million people in Nigeria, we don't have 200 million police officers. The police officers in Nigeria are taken out of the 200 million, and they are not up to 100 million. So, which means police cannot be police is not omnipotent. It's not omniscience. It can't be in the same place at the same time. Police needs me. Police needs you. Police needs me to report a neighbor who is perpetrating domestic violence against a child. The Lagos State Government, Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency, needs me to speak up. And that's why in Lagos State 2014, there is what we call mandatory reporter. Mandatory reporting law in Lagos State says that if you are living in Lagos State, says that if you are aware that a child is being abused, you can report. As a matter of fact, you can even report anonymously. You can report anonymously, to the government. And when you report anonymously, you can call and tell the government your name and say, please, I want my name to be kept out of this. You can even call and shield your own name. All you need to do is to give all the facts that in my neighborhood, I'm hearing noise or cry from this particular room, from this particular house. It is number so. I think if you move to the house, the room on the left, the room on the right, the flat upstairs or the flat downstairs, that's where the noise is coming from. There's this child who is always crying at about 12 midnight or early mornings and all of that. You can report all of that. It's also important that I note, by way of complete information. Do you know that in Lagos State, if you are aware that a child is being abused and you do not do anything about it, if it is found out that you are aware that a child is being abused and you do nothing about it, by your knowing and not doing anything about it, you have already flouted the law of Lagos State. And if you are arrested and prosecuted, such person will now be jailed for 2 years. Now, why would the person be jailed for 2 years? The person did not perpetrate the abuse. The person was not the one who abused the child. But under the law, there are 3 levels of abusers when children are abused. The first one is the person who created the enabling environment for the abuse of children. The second person is the person who actually committed the offense. The third person is the person we call accessory after the fact, who is aware that a crime is being committed against the child, who is aware that a crime is being committed against the neighbor, and who keeps quiet. The Lagos State government now says that if you are aware that a child is being abused, under the Executive Order 2014, mandatory reporting executive order. If you are aware that a child is being abused in Lagos State and you do not speak up, and it is found out that that child is being abused, and in the course of investigation, it is found out that this adult is aware that the child is being abused and he or she says nothing, such adult is going to be tried. If the adult is tried, the other adult is going to go to jail if convicted, for 2 years.
All right, so let's take it from there. Why do we have cases of domestic violence underreported? You just talked about the person who knows a child has been abused and refuses to speak about it being culpable as well. So that happens not just for children, but even for adults. For the victims themselves, some do not even report it. Now, Femi talked about that we're having more cases now reported of men being abused by women. But we do not have the actual statistics of men or women being abused because some of the victims will shy away from reporting. Why do we have this situation?
Well, there are many reasons why people don't report. Number one, they may think there's no help. Reporting is one thing, getting help is another thing. So if salute what the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency in Lagos State is doing, Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency, salute what they are doing. Is that replicated in 36 states of the Federation? Now, is that replicated? No. What is the disposition of government to respond? What are the available services? We are living in a country where most people are living in abject poverty. Everything has skyrocketed. Inflation rate is off the roof and all of that. So people are dealing with a whole lot of anger. People are angry with the state. People are angry with the government, but they can't go to Aso Rock. They cannot go to, they cannot meet out those anger against their focus. And so what do? They do transferred aggression. Their wives, their spouses, their husbands, their children, and the people suffer all of that. So people may not see light in the end of the tunnel for reporting. And again, that's number one. Number two is this cultural belief that, I want to stay with my children. For example, for a woman, I want to stay with my children even if I've been abused because I'm staying because of my children. And I've always told women that, the covenant of marriage is not superior to the covenant of living. As a matter of fact, it takes the living to be in a marriage or to be in a relationship, in an intimate relationship. So for me, ultimately, it is important that, women and men alike understand that you cannot condone domestic violence. You cannot, just refuse to speak up. You have to speak to someone. You have to find a way to make your voice heard. Now, there are many things that surround speaking up, though. There is, for example, a woman is married to a man who has disabled the woman economically. The woman has nothing, has no access to anything. And the woman is going through domestic violence. Now, the woman is thinking that if I leave this man, how do I sort out myself? Where do I go from here? All of those issues need to be addressed. What kind of home do I go to? What kind of apartment? What kind of facilities available for me to go to? How do I continue to pay the school fees of my children? Because some men will threaten, if you go, just go with the children, or if you go, you never see the children again. So all of these issues are things that answer to sensitization, answer to provision of amenities, provision of resources that those who speak up can lean on. So it's not enough to speak up. Some people, they speak up and they believe their case is worse off after they have spoken up. They are now wishing, they wished they did not speak up, because speaking up now, they are thrown out of that place which used to be a shelter. Now there's nowhere to go. The children are not going to school, and a lot is happening. So if people are going to speak up, it has to be an holistic package, a package that says you need to speak up. And when you speak up, these are the provisions that we have made to cater for you as a response to the backlashes that you will suffer as a result of speaking up. So all of those have to be taken into consideration. Our culture, the culture of stigma. If a child is sexually molested, parents believe that they should not speak up. That's a type of domestic violence. Parents believe that they should not speak up. They believe that if they speak up, that child may not find a husband in future. And I keep saying that you are fighting for a future when you have not protected the present. If my wristwatch is stolen, I'm allowed to go out there and say my wristwatch is stolen, no shame. If my ring is stolen, I'm allowed to go out there and say my ring is stolen, no shame. If my cap is stolen, I'm allowed to go out there and speak and say my cap is stolen. And when I report that my wristwatch is stolen, my cap is stolen, all of these things are stolen, everybody sympathizes with me. They do not see me as the bad person. But when I say my sexuality is stolen, when I say a man who is supposedly my husband, or a man who is, or a woman who is supposedly my wife, slaps me or beats me, society says I should be ashamed. I should be ashamed when my dignity of human person is taken away, but I should not be ashamed when tangible things that are replaceable, are taken away. So therefore, it's an upside down thinking. We need to surmount and overcome that thinking and be able to come out and speak. But again, we have to also help people with support group. When people speak up, there has to be support group where people can come together, have conversations, people that are going through the same thing are able to say there's nothing to be ashamed about. We can come together, we can form a group, we can speak. And I think that at the level of Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency in Lagos State, there's such support group. Apart from the fact that there are professionals working with those who speak up, there's also support group of people that are going through the same kind of experience, coming together to share experiences, share ideas, share passion, share pain, share pleasure, and they're able to move together, as into what is their defined future, as people who have suffered the same kind of injustice in the society.
Great. We're due for a break now. We'll go on a short break. When we return, our conversation with Taiwo Akinlami will kick off. Stay with us.
My name is Olatunji Shotimirin. I'm a performing artist and, television radio presenter and a university lecturer, Unilag. Keep watching Souk News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching Souk News. If you're not watching Souk News, I pity you, but keep watching Souk News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timmy Dakolo, and you're watching Souk News. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at Souk News. Guys, keep watching Souk News. For everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news, Souk News is your station.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata, and you're on to Souk News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it, because this is Souk News.
Shout out to Souk News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Souk News. Here's the Souk News who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Souk News. Thank you very much.
My name is Olatunji Shotimirin. I'm a performing artist and, television radio presenter and a university lecturer, Unilag. Keep watching Souk News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching Souk News. If you're not watching Souk News, I pity you, but keep watching Souk News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timmy Dakolo, and you're watching Souk News. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at Souk News. Guys, keep watching Souk News. For everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news, Souk News is your station.
Morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
It's a national orientation agency. It's, as far as I'm concerned, very ideal and unprofessional.
Government says that subsidy is not in oil, and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil.
Energy or whatever kind of off-grid solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, is a bismarck. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
All right, if you're just joining us, you have no cause to worry. We got you covered. We're still looking at the issue of domestic violence in Nigeria. And our guest is still here with us. Yeah, we have Taiwo Akinlami. Taiwo, glad to know you're still there with us.
Yeah.
Now, let's look at the issue of child marriage. It significantly has been contributing to the issue of abuse in Nigeria. Record has it that 30% of girls in Nigeria, they are married off before their 18th birthday. I want you to talk to us the impact of these on the issue of child abuse and what can be done to curtail this trend in Nigeria.
Well, wow. The truth of the matter is that child marriage is a menace, in our society. Can you hear me? Are you hearing me?
Please go ahead. Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Taiwo, we can hear you.
So the challenge, so the challenge is that child marriage is a major issue in Nigeria and across the globe. It's interesting to note that it is not only in Nigeria that we are dealing with the issue of child marriage, but it's very rampant in this part of the world because of the fact that ultimately our children are not, considered to be in the forefront of concern. There's no way we can discuss the issue of child abuse in Nigeria without discussing the issue of poverty. Poverty is a major issue that we hardly talk about, that we hardly look into when we talk about the issue of child abuse in Nigeria. And I think it is important that you look at who are the children being given out in marriage. It's not the children of the rich. It's the children of ones of wood and draughts of water, the children of the poor. You hardly find those who live in Ikoyi, in Lekki, in Parkview, in other parts, these eyebrow areas, in Asokoro and all of these places, or in Asorok. You hardly find their children being given out in marriage. There's a common denominator. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
So the common denominator is the fact that children, are being given out in marriage, and those who marry children also don't give out their own children out in marriage. The other time there was this report of a senator, of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, who was alleged to have married a 13-year-old or a 14-year-old. Now that took place in Abuja. That is where the Child Rights Act is supposed to kick in. But at the end of the day, we found that there were questions by NAPTIP and a different organization, and at the end of the day, the man was said to have no case to answer. And at the end of the day, he was let off the hook. Now that man who is highly placed is not going to give out his own children in marriage, but he can go ahead and marry the children of the poor. Now, he's not going to marry the children of those who are his fellow senators. He's going to marry the children of those. The allegation was that he married the daughter of his Egyptian driver. That was the allegation. And so for me, ultimately, what I think is that we need to address the issue of poverty. We need to address the issue of class. Because at the end of the day, if you say it is a religious matter, it will have been okay for if you say, for example, people say it is Islam that supports child marriage. And if Islam supports child marriage, why does it not go across board? It means that the children of the rich who are Muslims, who are from the north, will not go to school. It means that their 12-year-old, their 13-year-old will be given out in marriage. But it is not so. Now, the people who are given out in marriage are the children of the poor, not the children of the rich. So it therefore means that it's not a religious matter, because it does not go across board. You see the children of northern Muslims who are very rich celebrating, society weddings. So at the end of the day, we need to, readdress the issue. And how do we readdress the issue? The way to readdress the issue is to take a critical look at the root causes of this issue. What is the root cause? Why do people give out children in marriage? You address poverty, you address class, and maybe you want to also deal with the issue of culture. Now, all of these things are things that we have to holistically address. If we do not address all of those things holistically, this situation will continue to persist, and we're going to continue to have this conversation, which at the end of the day will appear to be a talk show. Please note that one of the major issues that made the lawmakers and the government in the north to oppose the domestication of the Child Rights Act 2003, which has not been domesticated in 30 states of the Federation, is because of the definition of a child. Because for the first time, the Child Rights Act defines a child, Section 277 defines a child as anybody below 18. And some of these people, and the Child Rights Act also go ahead and criminalizes child marriage, that nobody can give out a child in marriage, right? And not only that, prescribe punishment for those who give out children in marriage. So, but that law, has to be domesticated in a particular state for it to be enforceable. And so you find that there was a lot of pushback against the provisions of this law and the promulgation of this law in different states. But let me tell you what has happened. Some of the northern states that have now gone ahead to promulgate the Child Rights Act has reduced the age. They've changed so some of those laws have refused to adopt 18 years as the anybody below 18 as children. So they are playing with anybody below 13, anybody below 16, if you look at all of these laws. So that is what has happened. So in one way, laws have been promulgated in different states to protect children against child marriage. But the definition of who a child is has been tampered with. Even in Kano State, is it Kaduna State, that says that anybody who abuses a child will be castrated. Any woman who abuses a child sexually, any man who sexually molests or abuses a child will be castrated. That's the Kaduna law. And anybody who sexually molests a child will also, if it's a woman, a fallopian tube will be removed. Now, people rejoice when that law was passed, but looking at the law, you find out who is this child they are talking about. They've limited it within age 13, age 14, age 16, which now means that if someone in Kaduna State have something to do with a 16-year-old, with a 17-year-old, his fallopian tube is not going to be removed. The person is not going to be castrated because the child is above the age that law has defined to be a child. So these are complications, that we are dealing with, in Nigeria, and I think that until we address all of these complications, we'll not be able to find a credible way forward.
The judiciary is supposed to be the last hope of the common man, and it's supposed to be able to address issues of domestic violence. You just talked about one barrier that the system faces. What are other barriers that the legal system faces in addressing issues of domestic abuse?
In 2003, there was a Child Rights Act passed. Now, there's another law which is Violence Against Persons Act, the VAP Act, which has been passed at the federal level and has been domesticated in different states. But the foundational thing is that law is not always the problem. It is the awareness, because laws are not going to enforce themselves. When we talk about law enforcement, there's a problem, there's a mistake we always make. We think that law enforcement is the responsibility of the Nigerian police. law enforcement is not the sole responsibility of the police. There's something called public will, which means that if the public is thinking in a particular direction, if the public is moving in a particular direction, there's every possibility that the police will move in that direction. Look at what happened during the EndSARS. The public was moving in a particular direction. Police was forced to, even if it was palliative, they were forced to take some decisions. They were forced to make some adjustments. They were forced to amend some policies and all of that. So the truth of the matter is that policing and enforcement of the law has to do with where the people stand, people's public will. And I think that is achieved by sensitization. It is important that we understand that we need to sensitize people. People need to be aware. And that's what UNICEF did. When the Child Rights Act was passed in 2003, UNICEF made it a point of duty. I work with UNICEF. We traverse the length and breadth of this country, meeting people from different spheres of interest. We met teachers. We even met Nollywood. We met everyone we met police. We met NGO people. We met market women. We met kings. We met commissioners. Trying to sensitize them about the provisions of this law. We met school leaders. We met everyone that matter, so that we can create a level of awareness. But it's interesting to note that all of that effort was funded by donor agencies' money, foreign money. Now, the truth of the matter is that the Nigerian government that promulgated that law did not have a budget for the sensitization, on that law. So as long as there's no sensitization on VAP, for people to know these are the provisions, as long as there's no sensitization on the Child Rights Act 2003 and Child Rights Law of different states, we are going to be in this dead state. So the way forward is that there has to be a commitment. There's a reason why we have Federal Ministry of Information and Strategy, Federal Ministry of Information in states. There's a reason why we have, different, organizations, there's a reason why we have National Orientation Agency. What is the work of National Orientation Agency if it does not enlighten people on, domestic violence vis-a-vis the extant laws? What is the responsibility of Ministry of Information if it does not intimate people with the reality that is on ground? What is the responsibility of the Nigerian Television Authority, which is the organ of the federal government when it comes to disseminating information to the people? What is their responsibility? So you don't see a lot of sensitization going on. If sensitization is not going on, then the legal system is lame duck. When you look at judges buy in the same market. Judges read newspaper, judges come out, and judges are aware what is going on. If the judiciary is aware that the people are committed in a particular direction, and the people are informed in a particular direction, it's also going to inform the attitude and the habit and the responses and the nuances that the judiciary is going to put forward in the case of domestic violence and child abuse and all of that. So it is therefore important that we address the reality on ground, the big elephant in the room, which is the fact that we make laws, people are not aware of these laws. There are no sensitization going on. People are not able to, challenge the authority. They are not able to challenge, the government. They are not able to challenge even their own local government. They are not able to ask critical questions because the question is, what are the questions they are supposed to ask? They do not know the question to ask. So the legal system in itself is not existing in isolation. It is a product of the generality of the society. So we must make it a point of duty, therefore, to embark on sensitization. And that is why I must salute you, as an organization for, contributing your own quota to having this conversation. One conversation at a time, one person at a time, one environment at a time, one child at a time, one family at a time, we can spread this message and spread this word and make sure that it becomes, something that everybody is concerned about and everybody is ready to do something about.
Okay, great. Earlier you made reference to, you told us your story. You made reference to your own plight as a child. I like that fact, and I must commend your courage for that. Maybe that's why you're a better advocate now. But I would like you to talk to us about some of the practical steps that those who have suffered abuse can take to overcome the scar or the negative impact of this abuse on their lives?
Thank you very much. So, okay, it is my well-considered opinion that change is an ever-present possibility for any human being ready to take responsibility. So I believe very strongly that at the end of life, when we are at the departure lounge of life, and it is sure that we're going to take the flight out of this world, what is going to matter at the end of the day is not what has been done to us, is what we're able to make out of what has been done to us. People say, if life throws lemon at you, make lemonade. Now, but it is important to also know that it's easier said than done. I, got into the healing mode, February 16, 1997, when I became a follower of Christ. And that is the beginning of my journey. But I tell you today, I'm 53 years old. I started my journey of healing at the age of 27, and I'm still on that journey. It's a lifetime journey, because you see, children are not created to be abused. Abuse is not meant for children. What abuse does, abuse redirects the mind of children. Abuse messes up the mind of children. Once children are messed up, now they are sentenced to a lifetime of dealing with the impact of that abuse. And for me, what have I done? I think I've done few things. Number one is to accept change as a possibility. I realized that I saw my father pounded my mother. I believe that should not be my story. The buck must stop at my table. I should not engage in that. And I saw my father beat us. It's not that I experienced my father beat us. I also, decided that, well, I don't think I should go that route. I shouldn't be a terror to my children. So the fundamental thing is that belief. Many people don't believe, that they even have a problem. Many people don't even believe that their childhood has impact on them. So one, you have to sit down and take stock of your childhood. And I think that's where the journey starts from. When I turned 40, I've done at 40, I did a book where I did an audio book where I identified all the areas where I was abused growing up, and I identified what I believe I needed to do in dealing with that. So for me, you have to first identify what the issues are, areas where you were abused. That's number one. Number two, not only that, number two, you have to believe that healing is a possibility. Number three, you have to find out what is the requirement for healing. Number four, you have to subscribe to that requirement. Number five, you have to submit to that requirement. So it's a long process. To move from an abused childhood to transforming adulthood is a long process, is a journey. But I think it's a journey worth taking, because you see, we cannot, what I'm trying to do in my world today, I'm trying to give to the world what the world did not give me. And that is what I think, that's how to make a difference. Because if I give to the world what the world gives me, I'm going to perpetuate, or propagate a generation of abuse, and that in itself make the world a more difficult place to live in. But if I'm able to look at how I was raised, I look at the mistakes that my parents made, and I'm able to say, okay, my parents did not give me this. I want to give to the world what the world did not give to me. I want to move from the normal trajectory, which is giving to the world what the world gives you. The world abuses you, you show up and become a Hitler. The world abuses you, you show up and become a Ted Bundy. The world abuses you, you show up and become a Lawrence Ofigbanini, the law. One of the most notorious armed robbers the world has ever known was an abused child, was abandoned in childhood, was in the garage as a teenager. He grew up to become to the world what the world was to him. But the difference I'm trying to make today is that I'm trying to be to the world what the world was not to me, so that I can raise people, I can work with people also, so that we can minimize the impact of abuse, the impact of the things that we lose in childhood. Basically, that is how I think, we should approach it. So we cannot continue to duplicate our errors, to duplicate our experience of childhood, particularly when they are negative. And so by that, I'm not saying it is easy to do. As I've told you, I started my journey February 16, 1997, when I became a follower of Christ. Today, I'm still on that journey. But the beautiful thing is that And I am not where I used to be, though I'm not where I want to be, I'm not where I used to be. I'm still work in progress. And I think for a lifetime, it's going to be work in progress.
All right, for other victims of domestic violence, they may not be children, they may also be children. How and where can they seek help, particularly when the effects are mental than physical? Like the effect of the violence or the abuse they've suffered are more of a mental nature than you can physically see on them. How and where can they get help?
Well, I think the number one thing is that first, when we talk about mental health in this part of the world, we look at people who have grown dreadlocks, who are walking naked, on the road. But mental health since time immemorial has been defined as part of holistic health, by World Health Organization. And so it is important for us to understand that people may need some assessment with psychiatrists. You may need some assessment with clinical psychologists. You may need some assessment, through clinical therapy or talk therapy. All of these are realities that are on ground. And if you are interested in help, if you're in Lagos State, I think your first port of call is the Domestic and Sexual Violence Response Agency in Lagos State. It is a fusion of many services that are available. You find psychosocial support, you find legal support, you have enforcement support, you find financial support. All of this support converge in one place, and they become a directory body that are able to refer as to what you need to do. If you're outside Lagos State, you're under, I think what you need to do is to go online, check associations, NGOs that are available to provide this kind of service at the level of assessing your mental health. Where are you, mental health wise? Because you cannot begin to talk about help until we recognize, when doctor wants to help you, they first diagnose. It is the diagnosis or the prognosis that determine the kind of attention somebody is going to get. So I think the beginning, what we need to get comfortable with as Nigerians or as Africans, is to understand that we can go for assessment the same way you go for medical checkup, the same way you want to check what is happening to you medically, when it comes to your physical health, physiological health. The same way you can seek help for your mental assessments. People need to do, mental health assessment for us to know where are you, what are you dealing with, what are the issues, and what do we need to begin to do, to solve the problem. Until we accept that mental health is not necessarily a stigma. It's mental health is like every other aspect of our total well-being, our physical health, our physiological health, and at the same time our mental health. We're not ashamed to report headache. We're not ashamed to go for medical checkup. We should not be ashamed to take away the stigma, make access available for assessment, and when we go for assessment, make access available for treatment. It's not everybody that will end up in Yaba left. It's not everybody that will end up in Aro. No, it is a matter of approaching, recognizing that there are issues. If your upbringing has issues and you were abused, you were messed up, don't think that abuse, that witnessing domestic violence doesn't have an impact on you. It has an impact on you that you are not even taking time to evaluate and to understand. So the beginning of that, therefore, is to accept that something is wrong, and I need to assess what is wrong, and I need to find out what to do going from there to change the trajectory of my story for the better, particularly in the best interest of the generation that is observing us.
Oh, that's brilliant. What a great way to wrap up this conversation. Taiwo Akinlami, we want to thank you for spending time with us on Early Exchange, your brilliant submissions, and also salute your courage for using your story as a reference to make people better and to encourage victims to be better persons. We must thank you for spending time with us this morning. Thank you for your time on Early Exchange.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to doing this with you again.
All right, we'll go on a break now. When we return, we're still looking at the issue of domestic violence. We're going to speak with another guest who you will find out after this short break.
My name is Olatunji Shoti Mirin. I'm a performing artist and, television radio presenter and a university lecturer, Unilag. Keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching Sook News. If you're not watching Sook News, I pity you, but keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timidakolo and you're watching Sook News. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at Sook News. Guys, keep watching Sook News. For everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news, Sook News is your station.
Hi, my name is Fred Amata and you're on to Sook News.
If you are watching this channel for the first time, make sure you continue to watch it because this is Sook News.
Shout out to Sook News. Actually, I don't know. I really enjoyed the little moment I spent with you, and I think with more of this.
Sook News. Here's the Sook News who had the courage to transcend a locked off camera and actually have a conversation with a human being. It's a pleasure, Sook News. Thank you very much.
My name is Olatunji Shoti Mirin. I'm a performing artist and, television radio presenter and a university lecturer, Unilag. Keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching Sook News. If you're not watching Sook News, I pity you, but keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timidakolo and you're watching Sook News. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at Sook News. Guys, keep watching Sook News. For everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news, Sook News is your station.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
It's a national orientation agency. It's, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional.
If government says that subsidy is not in oil and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil,
Energy or whatever kind of off-grid solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, it's a bismarck. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
We're still talking about domestic violence today on Early Exchange, and taking the discussion further with us would be Richard Adeyemo Esquire, and is joining us virtually. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning.
Good to see you again.
Lovely to be.
All right, today it's all about domestic violence. What are your thoughts on the dimension that domestic violence seems to have gotten to? It used to be, Femi earlier on said it used to be more women crying out and say they're experiencing one form of domestic violence or abuse. But now the men have joined in, so it's not a gender thing anymore. Let's begin from there.
Yeah, on that issue, I say we'll have the feminists to thank. Since there has been the advent of equality and equity, we have begun to experience a categorization of humans as humans and not just men or only women or only men. It's now a thing of just humans. It's that men are now being considered as people too. In the past, men used to be superheroes and divine creatures that shouldn't have any pain. Boys shouldn't cry. And all of those kind of things that excused a lot of toxic masculinity. But now there's a lot of cry outs, because in as much as people are being treated equally in terms of women being given opportunities, it has now been experienced that men are being considered as people too, and the emotions, feelings, and the hurts that are occurring to the young male Nigerian is now being considered as a general problem. Thank you very much.
All right. According to the statistics, state government, about 340 cases have been reported in the last 1 year. Cases you have women beating their husbands. What do you think is largely responsible for this trend now, and what can be done to change the narrative?
Like I said earlier, women beating their husbands is not something that started today. It's just men never used to cry out until it became okay for, men to be heard now in society. It's not a new thing. There's nothing new under the sun. However, the existence also of a more uniform way of addressing people as people and not just as men or as women. Oh, you're a man, you shouldn't feel this, or you're a woman, you shouldn't be able to handle this. Those equalities have allowed things to come out more in the open. It's not as if it's today that women just started beating their husbands. It's something that is often reported. I believe that women are just as abusive as men. It's just society has excused a lot of things to be hidden from like the public view. Like, it's going to be very hard for you to find a guy who would come out and tell you about how he was punched by his lady. Also, the body mass index of men makes it such that when a man does an act of violence towards a woman, he is capable of doing more damage than a woman to a man. Not like a woman cannot do any physical damage to a man. It's just the body mass index permits that men can do more damage in larger percentage of men can do more damage than women. But because society has made it okay now for us men to voice out, then we're beginning to hear more about women violence on men as much as men being as abused as women. It's just back in the day, there was always the principle of boys don't cry. And that's why we never heard much of it. Thank you very much.
In seeking protection from further domestic violence or trying to get justice, what are some of the barriers that the victim may suffer with the legal system?
Evidence, mainly. Similar to the last conversation we had, it's the most important thing to prove an abuse is adducing evidence. In the event where you are unable to get to a competent hospital that can document the abuse that has happened to you, then what is the proof? It is just your word against his. In an event where a person has suffered violence and they don't have a way of documenting or getting a third party's opinion that will support their claim, then it's an issue of this person's word against this person. That's the only barrier so far. Besides the controversial whether or not you can afford the justice system or afford the police, it's those other things are just secondary, because like we also discussed in the last segment, the VAP Act now allows that you can personally enter a prosecutorial position for certain abuses that have happened to you. So the advent of that act does not limit you to wait only for law enforcement to act on your behalf, especially in an event where you don't trust the police. Or many people have their own reasons why they're afraid of going to the police. However, for whatever reason the person has, PTSD or whatever, there is also grounds for you. There's also the room, that's the avenue that is available for people to make actions in their own capacity in event of violence. And that is through the VAP Act.
All right.
Thank you.
Richard, glad to have you join us once again.
Thank you very much.
Now, going by the provisions of the law, I would like you to educate us on what constitutes domestic violence or abuse. Going by the provisions of the law, for you to enlighten us on what constitutes domestic abuse and violence.
Yes. Domestic abuse and violence is provided for in the criminal code. I'm sorry, I cannot produce the sections right now. In the penal code, in the VAP Act, and in every other body of statutes that covers violence and protection of individuals generally. Now, violence can come in different forms, and it is provided for statutorily and in case law. Violence can come in multiple forms. Violence can come physically, can come mentally, can come emotionally as well. The most valuable thing that a person can do for themselves in expressing an occasion of violence that has occurred to them, or in reporting such an occasion, is to secure the services of a legal practitioner that will source out the necessary and the most applicable principle of violence to your action. In the event where a person has suffered certain abuses and the actions are not brought under the proper provision of law, then in that instance, the abuser can get away with the actions that have occurred to him. For instance, in the past, when there was the discussion of whether or not a child's molestation can be defined as rape or defilement, in instances where those actions were brought under rape, under the criminal code, the abuser was seen to have walked away. It's not because the judicial system was incapable of convicting. It was just that the action was not brought under the actual and the permissible provision of law that would have tagged the offense to the action. And for that reason, it is necessary to secure legal representation such that the action can be brought with commensurate acts that will punish it. Thank you very much.
Of emotional abuse, for instance, so even mental abuse, what kind of proof would be relevant?
That is quite difficult, especially in the country that we reside in, where people hardly turn to therapists or psychologists for help for fear of being called mad people. But in instance of emotional abuse, I would tell you, according to the book, what is most essential to prove is a report of a therapist or a psychiatrist. They are the ones who could draw a possible assessment of how a person's mental capacity or a person's mental engagement has depreciated from a certain instance to another instance. It is also very difficult to prove, except it has also shown some sort of degree of damage on the person's maybe the person's outlook or the person's reactions towards things. And these things are going to be difficult to prove, except you can get a report of a therapist. It is essential that Nigerians begin to consult more with therapists and psychologists who can help them to get through things, because a lot of issues are being buried in our society today as just stress or any other name but mental illness that it truly is. And because there is the shaming of people who go to psychiatrists as being mad people. I mean, the most renowned psychiatrist in Lagos is at Yaba Left. And if you are sitting with your friends and you tell them that, oh, it's almost time for my session at Yaba Left, I'm sure you won't sit with them tomorrow. So it is what we need to take out is shaming, most especially. We need to take out victim shaming, and then we would see more people confront their mental issues and their emotional issues, because they are very similar. The mental and emotional issues are literally cousins, because it's the mental issues are things of maybe how they behave and how they process, and the emotional issues similarly to are things of how they feel and how they process. So these issues are things that can be best handled with a competent psychiatrist, and further to it, in the event where there is an abuser, then a legal practitioner. Thank you very much.
Right. I would like us to provide some information for victims now on how they can seek legal redress or legal intervention in cases where they are abused. What are the practical steps to be taken? What are the practical, maybe the documents, the requirement for their cases to be substantial?
There is no specified form or document that must be obtained in proving abuse, mental abuse or abuse or violence in any form. There's no specified form that must be obtained. However, I would tell you that there are procedures that should be observed in order to establish a good case, a quality case, or a quality report for abuse and violence. In such instance that it is physical or even emotional, or that requires medical attention, it is important to, at the quickest instance, access the medical practitioner documentation before eventually reporting or petitioning through a legal practitioner to law enforcement. Immediately this is done, then a copy of such medical report can be attached to enable the police to towards the petitions, because the police and law enforcement generally receive a lot of petitions. And so in order for you to bring your actions to them and make your action as quality as it is, you must even do half their work for them. It's not because they're not competent to, but it's just so you can establish that it is glaring. So in that instance where a medical report is attached, then the police have no option but to investigate the petition. Now, in an instance where the police go ahead to investigate the petition, then they get to prosecute the individual if after our investigation, I have been fully convinced that there has been an abuse or some sort of violent act done to the complainant. Then there is a prosecution done, whereby the charge is drafted and the abuser is made to plead guilty or not guilty to the charge. On the civil end of it, and that's on the criminal end of it, going through law enforcement and the police. On the civil end of it, you have an individual who has suffered some sort of violence or abuse, who, again, I would advise, first of all, and most importantly, get a professional's report. The report of a professional is taken so seriously such that it is provided for in the Evidence Act, that in the instance where a professional in any field gives a report about an occurrence that states the truth of that action having happened or the validity of or existence of a thing, those things should be taken very seriously by the judges. Now, get that report of a professional, a medical professional that will assess and establish the occurrence of violence or an abuse on the individual. Obtain that and attach to most like maybe a demand letter or a cease and desist of some sort of letter, notifying the individual in the first instance that such report has been brought about them and allowing them to address the issue. That is if you want to go through the civil angle, or in any case, establishing the evidence of the abuse happening and immediately filing an action under the relevant provision of the VAPP Act of 2015. Thank you very much.
Ensuring that the victim gets justice or even prevent further abuse, the victim, like you said, would need legal services. But that is not something everyone can afford or every victim can afford. In cases where they cannot afford it, are there agencies of government dedicated to providing pro bono services for them, and is it effective?
Yes. There are multiple services that are available for justice for people who cannot afford justice. I mean, there's legal aid. There are the law clinics of several universities that are open to that. I can tell you for one, Bayes University has a quality legal clinic that will take up your matter any day and do it for you for next to nothing, literally nothing. There are other legal human rights bodies, the Human Rights Commission, and many other human rights bodies that I can't even begin to call out for lack of time. There are many human rights commissions that will take up your actions for free. There are many young lawyers that will take up a quality action in the event where you have helped yourself to a very solid point. There are many young legal practitioners that are looking for an opportunity to take up a landmark matter. So in an event where a person has, let's take for instance, consulted a psychiatrist and they have obtained a quality medical report showing that such a person's action have caused a mental breakdown of this other individual. That's a landmark case that I don't think many Nigerians have been able to establish in court. And that's an action that would attract almost any legal practitioner to take up for free or almost free. But specific to your question, there are many human rights bodies that are open to taking people's cases. There are many NGOs, legal NGOs, that are established just for this act. There are NGOs established for all sorts of categories of people, for children, for women, for widows. Like there's Daughters of Abraham Foundation for women and children and females. Generally, it's mainly for women. That foundation will take up any action of abuse or trafficking of any sort. That's Daughters of Abraham, Daughters of DOAF, Daughters of Abraham Foundation, yes. And there are many other bodies similar to that. These NGOs that are made specifically for certain categories of individuals would most likely, if not 100% always, take up actions against an individual who falls within the category of their beneficiaries and take up such actions, even if they don't take prosecute personally, employ the service of a legal practitioner of high quality that will prosecute such violence and abuse.
All right, great. For perpetrators of domestic violence, what are the likely consequences under the provisions of the law for those who perpetrate these acts of domestic violence, for men, for women, and I think children too, if possible?
Yes. Under the criminal code and the penal code on the criminal code, it's mainly jail term, no less than 7 years. Under the depending on the category and the degree of it all. And in the penal code, there's even lashes of the cane. There's caning involved because the penal code is more akin to the north. Under the VAP Act, there is monetary, There's monetary compensations that could be paid. It looks a little like small, but the court has the discretion of increasing the monetary damages that can be paid to the individual, as well as jail term. So there's no limit to the punishments that can happen, but there is no death sentence for abuse or violence. But there's jail term and there's monetary damages that can be awarded to the abusee, to the abused person.
To what Femi asked, first of all, I find that the punishment for the penal code a bit funny, where lashes have to be given to maybe a perpetrator. It seems like trying to correct violence with violence. But aside from that, do you think that there's any need to review the punishment for perpetrators of domestic violence?
Not necessarily, except violence against children. But domestic violence, jail term, and for like to an adult or to a person who has the wherewithal and the mental capacity to handle it, maybe a grown individual above 21, maybe the punishments available are insufficient, I may say. However, in instances of young people and children, babies, infants, I think there should be a review on the punishments available. I think more scary punishments should be brought into the conversation. There should be more stringent, more heinous punishments that should be brought about for abusers of children and infants. I think it should. I think it's worthy of conversation right now to include other. I don't know. I don't want to say anything specific, but I think it's necessary for us to reopen that part and maybe include something more horrific as the act itself. Thank you very much.
All right, I would like to find seek your opinion in cases where victims don't want to speak up. You know, we have this culture in this climate where people, because of the stigma, they don't even want to seek legal intervention. How much of impact will this be on seeking justice in a place like Nigeria?
It's going to hinder the pursuit of justice. When a person can't come out to report, then where is the case? I mean, if no offense has been established, then there is no wrong done. There's no case to handle. There's no case to answer for. I think what should happen is these NGOs that have been set up for certain categories of individuals, human rights bodies, should look into offering services to people and while protecting them and giving them anonymity. However, back to the VAP Act again, it permits, now under the VAP Act, especially with offenses that are against children and offenses bordering on violence, it permits that an individual can take up action on behalf of another. Now, in an instance where a friend of mine has been abused by someone else and I learn of it, I can take up the action on his behalf as according to the provisions of the VAP Act. Like I said, the VAP Act is rich and it is recent and it is modern and it allows for protections of more offenses, more offenses and it allows also the flexibility for the actions to be taken on behalf of others. So even in an instance where people are afraid to come out because of how they will be treated for it, they can be prosecuted in representative capacity. That is, they have nothing to do with the action, and the action is taken up on their behalf. I think that is a very, very commendable method that the VAP Act has taken, a commendable approach that the VAP Act has taken in helping to take actions on behalf of people who are more quiet about what they have experienced. Thank you very much.
Esquire, for talking with us today on domestic violence. We value so much your contributions.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, let's go on a quick break and return to look at other aspects of domestic violence. Stay tuned to Early Exchange.
My name is Olatunji Shoti Miri. I'm a performing artist and, television radio presenter and a university lecturer, Unilag. Keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Kenny Black, Africa's finest music comedian, and you're watching Sook News. If you're not watching Sook News, I pity you, but keep watching Sook News.
Hello everyone, my name is Timmy Dakolo, and you're watching Sook News. Stay tuned. Hi, my name is Wisdom Oluwaseun Okoko, co-founder Orbit Africa Properties. I'm live at Sook News. Guys, keep watching Sook News. For everything that concerns business, economy, politics, news, Sook News is your station.
Good morning and welcome to Early Exchange with Blessing Aiche, Femi Ayodele, Sam Oruoje, and Idahosa Osamanze.
It's a national orientation agency. It's, as far as I'm concerned, very idle and unprofessional.
The government says that subsidy is not in oil, and government is not supposed to be paying subsidy in oil.
Energy or whatever kind of off-grid solution we will be looking at.
Today we are conducting mining today. Solid minerals, as an example, is, in no disrespect to anybody, it's a bismarck. We definitely need improvements in those areas. Of course, there are infrastructural needs.
This is Early Exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.
Many thanks for staying tuned. At this time, we want to pay more attention to the child in this equation when you talk about domestic violence, because a lot of times they can't speak for themselves, and that is why this show today seemed like some form of advocacy. Let's look at how domestic violence impacts the child in every respect. And looking at this with us right here in the studio is Reverend Juliet Benite, who is a certified mediator, trainer, and facilitator of leadership concepts. Good to have you in the studio, ma'am. Good morning.
Good morning. My pleasure to be here.
And seeing you today, I just feel like it's going to be more of a session for parents on how to do parenting. Let's begin from there.
Yeah.
Parenting the child, the misconceptions that could come up, parents trying to ensure that going by the biblical injunction, do not spare the road and spoil the child. Now, at what point does it lead to even violating the child or abusing the child?
Well, you know, child abuse has to do with the maltreatment of the child, whether it's physically, emotionally, or sexually, and educationally. Sometimes we forget the aspect of the education of the child is actually child abuse. When the child is denied education, it is child abuse. With Nigeria has 20 million children out of school. 20 million is a population of nations in Europe. our children are out of school in the street begging is fundamentally child abuse, and it's also the failure of parenting. The greatest offense that has happened in our time, and even as Africans most especially, is that even when a young girl or man is getting married, we talk and emphasize so much on the marriage between these two and forget the concept of parenting, which is the very reason, one of the major reasons for coming together. And parenting is where you form a child's capacity to the level of his own gifting or her giftings, as the case may be. And so in raising up children, parents need to know what discipline is. Discipline must be balanced. Even God in his discipline is balanced. But without discipline also, you are abusing that child. Because what you are doing to the child, you're denying the child the discipline required for his stability. Today we have all sorts of area boys and indolence and insolence and all sorts of issues in our society because one woman and a man did not take time to raise that child. Children are not flowers. They don't grow in the garden and it's automated. Children are formed. And so even from the womb, there are cultures that believe that when a woman is even pregnant, how she surrounds herself, what she's hearing on a daily basis will determine the formation of that child. It is actually even child abuse to terminate a child that did not request to come. So abuse of children is escalating. Is the major factor in our world. In Africa, we are talking about child mutilation. In the West, they are now talking about child mutilation in the name of transgenderism. So there are issues that we are dealing with. But the fundamental factor is that the child is an individual. As much as the child passes through your home, he is not really yours. She's not really yours. Because at the end of the day, she's going to be an executive in an office, a husband or a wife to someone, a manager somewhere, a leader somewhere. And because you fail to give the fundamental training to that child. When I got married, my greatest shock was in raising children. I was actually flabbergasted. I had to call both my in-laws who are older and other people. I said, why do you people tell us the truth? The real deal is raising children. It's the hardest work on the planet. That's why some women would rather take their handbags and go and sit in an office. Because it's easier than to sit at home and train that naughty one that sometimes every child comes with a tendency. So child abuse is also at that various level. But there is a higher level whereby you extremely begin to beat a child. Maybe you wanted a male, and you ended up with a female. And you look upon that female, especially maybe you'll be having female. So maybe the third female become the wrath of an anger because you're looking for the male child. And so at the end of the day, you start abusing the child and denying that child certain pleasure because you feel that that's not what you wanted. So parents need to recognize that children did not negotiate to come. Children were brought forth. So if there's a priority in a nation, in a family, everywhere is children. For example, if we need to serve food, I serve the children first. I had a housekeeper who had an issue with it. She said, why am I serving the children? I should serve Oga. I said, Oga don't grow finish. Oga an old man. These are the ones that need to eat food. And she was in shock because child abuse includes when the father is eating the thigh and the flesh and the legs and the children are eating the bone that has no meat. It is child abuse because the protein required for that child's brain development to be the next Nigeria or the next African that will bring change is being denied. And so the development capacity is being shortchanged. So child abuse is so high that the United Nations says 1 out of 4 girls and 10% of boys. Nigeria, 20 million out of school, a population of 200 million plus. We're still counting, we're not too sure, are out of school. Has proven that what UNICEF statistics says is a fact. And we are all sitting down pretty, and the child on the streets, the child at home that has not gone to school because we have policies that are not working. So it's so fundamental.
All right. Let me take you back, permit me to take you back to the issue of domestic violence. We've been speaking with men. And
Yes.
that we have you here. I would
Yes.
like to have your take in that regard. You know, the statistic has it that 1 in 4 women, 1 in 9 women in Nigeria are likely going to be involved in physical abuse with their partner. What do you think is largely responsible for the trends or cases being reported recently about the issue of domestic violence
Parenting.
in Nigeria?
Parenting. Parenting. Institutions like religion, whether it's Islamic religion, Christians, wherever, those two, and thirdly, education. A child who sees his dad consistently abusing his mother and sees the mother also taking it without response. And why does the mother take it without response? Because she has been told it's okay. No, it is not okay. It's absolutely evil under the sun. It's even against God and against humanity. And so upbringing, fundamentally, I've told friends of mine, I've told myself, my children are in their 20s, before they enter anybody's house, speaking Pidgin a little bit here, with permission, I will ensure we investigate. Family content matter. A lot of people are suffering because of family content. I have people who go and report to their in-laws, and the in-laws say, hey, me too, they beat me too, they beat me, and I stayed. Really? They beat you and you stayed, and you now have validated that the fact that child domestic abuse is okay. There's also the gaslighting, reducing a woman's capacity to bear as minimum. But there's also abuse of husbands. I mean, don't understate that, but it's not as glaring as what the women have gone through. Women have died. I have them. I know the ones that have died. Sinachi, case in point. I have people who had to end up in psychiatric hospital because of domestic violence. Why does domestic violence happen? Because we need to understand its root so that we begin to tackle it properly. And that's why the last time I was speaking, I said we need mental health centers like never before. Let's not call it psychiatric homes. It would be better to code it as mental health. So now when the person is going, he will know that probably he's going to meet a counselor, but it's actually the fact that he has psychosis or she has psychosis. And what is that psychosis? In your mental faculty, you already have a problem of understanding the concept of marriage and the partner you have. Your partner is not your slave. Even the concept of bride price needs to be revisited in its understanding. Because you didn't go purchase a wife. You brought in a woman to help and partner with you in raising a better generation. And like I said the last time, a woman who is not fundamentally focused, emotionally strong, will raise weak children. And weak generation, weak society, weak nations. So parenting is fundamental. I am blessed I have both male and a female. And even when I was raising them, I fundamentally let them know what makes them unique. And there are certain things that is not, it must be female. For example, the philosophy of washing of clothes. My son had to learn to wash a bit before he also learned to use the washing machine, because I have a philosophy of washing machine. I don't believe people spending 3 hours using their hands to do what machines can do. But my son knew how to cook. My daughter knew how to cook. I told my son, cooking is a skill, and never marry a woman for her cooking skill. Marry her for capacity. Marry her for ability. Because cooking is something that can be replaced by cooks if you have money, by housekeepers if you have money. There are certain things that cannot be replaced. And I told them those things. And even as a young boy, he dares not even touch a female in any form, starting with his own sibling, because the girl is the younger one, or people in school. My ear can't hear it. Because I already reminded him that you're on a transition in my home. You're not a permanent resident. And so that fundamental understanding has not been ingrained. Lies have been told a man, a particular guy slapped his wife and the baby dropped on the floor. And today the baby has mental issues. So control, self-control, these are the things we were taught in discipleship. Controlling yourself, understanding your limits, boundaries, they need to be taught. See, life is not automated. Life is created. As long as we as human beings, we need to know it is line upon line, precept upon precept. We need to understand that people need to know incremental change. And every child must be trained. That's why I was telling you about the spare the rod. The spare the rod is simply saying when the child is wrong, discipline the child. Doesn't mean take a stick per se. There are many ways of disciplining the child. And so we need to know that we discipline with love. Remember that also, we discipline with love, not with hate. That's the difference between the abuse. One is with love. After a child does something, why did you discipline the child? The child should know. You are being punished, or you got 2 strokes of cane because XYZ happened. So everything draws back to that home where because an abused man also, a man that was also overly punished, abused, will grow up as an oppressor. Because anger will rise up and he will oppress all those that are around him. And the wife will be the first benefit of that oppression. So it is not the wickedness of just individuals, but it's a system that creates them. And if we want a turnaround, we have to go to the root cause of it. Because many people think it's not solvable, it's not doable, but it is. But we need those policies that help people to make those transitions. So if somebody is caught abusing the child, his wife, the only solution is not jail term. The man must go through the detox of the process to understand what it means to be a man as a leader in his home, and also what it means to lead in his home and how to lead. So people need to be trained.
All right, finding solutions to this, 2 things. What role will education play in parenting? For a parent who's perhaps not literate, would that in any way hinder the ability to bring up a child properly? And when children are in a home where there is abuse, what can they do?
Okay, 2 things. The leader of Singapore, the late Lee Kuan Yew, came up with the statistics on education and the outcome of their children in society. It was a shocking, revealing experiment. So he insisted that the men should not marry downward. The men should marry upward, meaning the graduate men and educated men must marry educated women. So they spend time as a society to re-educate their society. The reason for continuous illiteracy, what does that mean? Why do we still have high level of illiteracy as a nation and as a continent? It's still an abuse. And so we need to also know how to double back and understand that education is important. Because that mother who is not really educated, the child will be shortchanged. Not that the child can't develop well. There is a woman who, she wasn't educated, but she insisted that the children's education was fundamental. So she pushed on those children. Today, all her children are doing well. So you also have to have that level of character. But today we have people who are going to the market all day. They go to do slave work all day, and nobody's looking at that child. The neighbor is raising the child is being abused by the neighbor. He becomes a street child, and the street child becomes the area boy, and the area boy becomes something else. Or becomes an orchard child in the north and join a terrorist group because nobody paid attention. So parenting must be trained. If there's anything religious organization, they must have a roadmap for parenting, as much as training institutions for parenting. Parenting is not automated. If we go into school to be a doctor, why shouldn't I be educated and trained to become a parent? Even if I cannot train as in reading and writing, I could be trained in my own language what it takes to bring up a child in the native language. So all that still requires training. And the other issue of
what can a child in an abuse home do?
A child in an abuse home needs to cry out to either a leader institution. That's where religious groups also comes in. You know, apart from government, we as a community, there must be community responsibility of one another. That's how it was done of old. The government was not the one doing it. It was community leaders and the religious leader that was taking responsibility for that abused child. So that child is removed out of the home and the parents are retrained, and if it's necessary for them to be brought back, they'll be brought back. But now the states, as it were, in Western world have taken over that responsibility that was meant to be for the religious body to take responsibility. But the child must cry out. No child should be silent in abuse.
All right, let's look at this dimension to domestic violence. It's also good to balance the discussion.
Yes.
Where you have women beating their husbands now, according to statistics available in Lagos State. In fact, interestingly, they beat them to submission. about 340 cases in the last 1 year.
Especially during the COVID-19.
So what's likely responsible for
Mostly the women that succeed in doing that probably are financially empowered to the degree they want to oppress. And they are violent women, because also remember now, that woman, if I traced her, now if I'm counseling her and I trace, I will find out that she was abused. And all men to her psychic, all men are terrorists, all men are wicked. So unfortunately, somebody married a woman with that psychological issues and complexes. And so she is lashing out on that male man, that any attempt to try and usurp her, she does it in the double, so that she will make sure you remember forever that she's not one of those women. But it's not necessary. It's also a psychosis. You are having psychological issue of, I always tell people, I said, we're supposed to be married, we have had children together, why are we fighting? It's the most abnormal thing in the planet for me. Then later on, someone will even go back to bed, even after that, after they are beating each other. And I look at these people, I say, you're not normal. So that's not normal, we need to solve it. So that woman too has psychosis. Most likely, I will guarantee you, either thoroughly sexually abused, or turned to a slave in her home, or by an auntie, an uncle, or someone. She is an abused woman. There is no way a normal woman who was brought up in a proper family will ever do that. It's a classic case of abuse. And so she becomes the abuser. And that's why I say, for me, I'm not in a hurry to say they should go to jail if it's not totally excessive of both sexual violence and excessive of domestic violence. People need to be counseled more. That's why I did mediation, because people need to be counseled more than to be cut off. So we have people who are suffering from what they themselves don't even know have become an issue because of the way they were brought up. And it could also be a teacher, it could be words that were said. When you keep degrading and denigrating, and if you check for a woman, for example, check 2 generations back, they are probably all single mothers. Unfortunately, she married and said, this man, I have to put him under control so that ABC will happen. People quarrel. I mean, I quarrel with my husband. I have issues, especially when things are not done according to the principles. But carry the stick and start beating, it can't happen because I didn't see it happening. I wasn't taught that. And although I had my abuse case, like I said, in the polygamous home, but it was not to the extreme that people were beating me for me to think that I have to beat people. Although I'm a very disciplined person and I'm a disciplinarian first class. However, never to the level of abuse. There's self-control.
All right, you just mentioned the school. The abuser could even be the teacher talking down on children. Maybe you feel the teacher feels the child is not so brilliant, using words like olodo, meaning like the child is dull. But what are those signs you would see and get to know, or begin to think that perhaps this child has been abused? It could be from the home, it could be from the school. What are the signs an abused child exhibits?
Yeah, I mean, I've been married for over 28 years. So in the early time of my marriage, children gather in my house to do their lessons. Because I have read a lot before I got married. And fundamental in my psychic, all bringing of children was on my table. I was someone that I say, by the time I'm in my 60s, I don't want to hear any issue that I'm running after a child, because I want my space and I want to fulfill my own purpose. But there was this child that was in my house. Of all the children, the quietness and the lack of participation, he doesn't get involved. So I had to sit him aside, separate from everybody, trying to get to know the child. So I called the mom. I said, there's something abnormal about this child. And he said, oh, the teacher in their school, they always call him Olodo because he was a quiet type. Not that he's not intelligent, he doesn't want to respond. He's not responsive, being a quiet one, because children come with what we call the bent. Children come with their own wills, but you need to now shape it right for societal function. And so I told the mom immediately, take that child out of that school now and right now. And that's what she had to do. She had to remove the child from that school. But other ways is to report so that the teacher can be removed, or the teacher has to be retrained. Because sometimes that teacher, and that's why psychology is very important. That teacher could also be suffering from psychosis. She's also an abused woman who now lashes on the children, but somebody has not taken time to examine her. And that's why nothing should be taken by chance, no report. And great countries like Singapore today, all their leaders go through psychometric test. Psychometric test. And so we need to also have psychometric test as a policy for a lot of leaders. I mean, we have political leaders who are abusing people and doing all sorts of things. And so the teacher in the class also has issues. So we shouldn't just meet someone and think everything is okay. The person is the package of the foundation of their parent background, foundation of their education, and the foundation of their religion. And that religion, there could be abuse also in religion. So don't even kid yourself. Abuse can be happening within the church gate and the mosque gate. So we should not deny the fact because we call it religion, all is well. So everywhere abuse is taking place with a torchlight and a comb and a broom, we need to find out, because people who are not psychologically balanced cannot lead.
All right. For couples who are battling with the issue of domestic violence, maybe even for years, at what point do you consider separation or divorce? And then let's look at the religious angle to it, that divorce is not an option. Then also the welfare of the kids. What should be taken into consideration?
You know, first and foremost, when there is abuse that is excessive, what do we mean by excessive? Mean to the degree of violence that creates harm. You know, there's a fighting. People fought is not necessarily violent, but now this is the man slamming. I have a friend, the husband slammed her on the wall. And at that level, they must separate. There's no story. There's no story. Separation is better than death. All marriages end up on earth. There is no trans-marriage into heaven. In heaven, there's no marriage. So anybody who thinking they are going to be marriage in heaven is kidding themselves. For me, as a Christian, it's clearly written in Scripture. Then secondly, the issue of divorce. Divorce is a really, really complex case whereby it should only be prescribed where all options are off the table. What do I mean by that? Meaning that this abuser refuses to change. He doesn't want to go for counseling. He still wants to have his way. He's a narcissist. He wants to ensure that he continues to do it. When he refuses, normally separation takes a time. When we say separation, it could be 6 months, it could be 1 year. Both parties must be ready to go through counseling and go through psychological evaluation and ensure that they are fit to live together. At that point in time, the child should always stay with a psychologically balanced one. The one who is psychologically balanced. Otherwise, we look for relatives who are balanced, that can take responsibility. And that's where the state comes in. It's not for the state to take the child, because that is not right. The child must still be in the community or family, but the state can support such a family who wants to take responsibility when the two parties are crazy. So, but after we have dealt with you people apart, and we have a sense, no divorce can take place at an immediate junction. For me, divorce must take place maybe after 3 years, 4 years, when all options, and I repeat, all options have been looked at. And even God himself divorced his people at the time. So divorce, he say he hates, but sometimes it's permitted for the sanity of the individual and the security of life. Life is bigger than marriage.
Thank you very much, Reverend Juliet Beniti, certified mediator, trainer, and facilitator of leadership concept, for talking to us about child abuse in the context of domestic violence. We appreciate your time with us here in the studio.
Once again, thank you for inviting me. It's my pleasure.
And the lessons are this: if you've been in one way or the other abused, then you need to seek help. It takes an abused person to also become an abuser. You do not need to take it for granted and say, perhaps by yourself thinking that you've healed. You may need the help of an expert to help you through it, so we can have a sane society and experience raising better children. I'm Blessing H. That's been the show today. Coming up at 10 o'clock with Business Insight here on Sook News. Stay.
And it's important to emphasize that there's no excuse for engaging in domestic violence. We just have to stop it as a person, as people, and as a nation. I am Femi Ayodele. Bye for now.